Hi, I'm Keegan. We're back with GM Talks, and I'm joined with Matthew Dawkins to talk about politics and gaming yet again.
Hello, hello. Glad to be here.
Perfect. So, this is one I was thinking about, and I know we talked about it briefly off camera. Is with the world below, a lot of people didn't like a couple of the communities because they felt too pro-communist.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
But I'm wondering if you accidentally stumbled into political commentary there, where you showed that you could have an egalitarian society with not a ton of resources, still kind of moving on, or maybe that has become a more positive depiction of it, given that we live in a capitalist society and people can't afford anything regardless anyway, and they're just separated.
It wasn't stumbled into. The world below was made with a definite political intent. Each settlement has a slightly different shade of politics to it. I think in the first chapter, there's a reference to how some settlements are set up, or sort of anarcho-syndicalist guidelines, if such things exist. Others are more purely exploitative. Some operate from an egalitarian perspective of to everyone their efforts, their rewards. Others have a more it doesn't matter whether you contribute or not. Everyone deserves some food in their mouths. Basically, the whole idea is I guess, not just Earth politics, because we've got some fantasy stuff in there as well relating to magic and monsters and so on. But how if you, I guess, refined a world's worth of politics into one scattered refugee outpost, which is what the world below is, how you would end up with these radically disparate, fairly, to use the word again, radical viewpoints. For example, and this is going off the top of my head, I know Telver's Hearth is a very popular settlement in the world below. It's kind of central. It has a very strong aesthetic to it. Everyone has their own forge, and it has very, I guess, anarchistic leanings in the sense that there is no regulator, there is no law that is commanding you to produce X amount or support thy neighbor. However, there is also the understanding that if you isolate yourself from the rest of the community, then that is going to potentially bite you in the ass when you're looking for people to buy your products, or indeed defend you when there's a monster swarm deciding to descend upon you during the calm season. So there's independence, the possibility of operating outside of any kind of system, but at the same time there is the social construct of you need your neighbors because without them you're going to die, and probably, well, lose your mind and become a horrible hermit if you don't interact with them. So the guilds on top of that add a layer to it. But yes, I know I obviously ramble, but the intention with the world below was always to examine a whole realm of politics and even come up with some uncomfortable conclusions. The possibility that in a situation like that of the world below, things like autocracies, things like even fascistic systems can help a settlement when they are beset on all sides. Then that is an uncomfortable thing to examine, and obviously everything's going to have its darker element, especially when you're looking at autocracies and fascism. But there is a reason why I think humans, even if it's just at a very base level, we often defer to centralized power autocracies in situations of great distress. We often start looking to the great leaders, the strong men, the great men of history, that kind of thing, even within the most egalitarian systems.
That's fair. Excuse me. I think that is an interesting point, and I think with the setting of the world below, I think it adds an extra layer because it's not nihilistic. That, but I don't mean be that, but it adds a layer of uncertainty because the world itself, a lot of things are based to random chance. So a fascistic society could just exist not because it's a good system, even in this kind of chaotic bad world, but because it just got lucky on how the chaos seasons worked and allowed it to survive where it was.
Oh yeah,
Solely
yeah. I
on
mean
luck.
that. I think while they would probably dress it up in more flowery terms that serve them, certainly fascism in any strain of its existence is an exploitative system. It is a system based around strength and preying on the weak, although again they would dress it up in a more well, let's say that, well, they don't always dress it up, but they might try and say, no, no, we're just looking after our own people, and it's necessary in this situation to do it.
Yes.
And in a survivalist situation, let's say, in the short term, because as history has shown, fascism doesn't tend to work over a long period of time, and nor does communism for that matter. At least as we've seen so far. China may refute that, but that's a separate debate, I imagine. But yeah, the idea that, as you say, circumstance may make fascism and other centered power on one leader or one principle, one, I guess, Führerprinzip or the like, that puts a lot of power in a few people's hands and creates artificial rungs on a ladder to basically say, well, these people belong here, these people belong here, these people don't even belong on the ladder, so they should be in our settlement anymore. They're taking away from our settlement. You could see that, and in the world below, even, I dare say, sympathize with it in certain situations, and that should, as players and as characters both, force us to confront, as I say, uncomfortable truths, but also find ways to overcome such oppressive systems. And the route isn't always going to be something as polar opposite as communism, let's say.
Sure.
I think we, as people born in the 20th century, came on the wave, I guess, or in the wake of it looking like, well, there's the far right, that's your fascists, your Nazis, and then there's the far left, that's your communists, and hopefully you're somewhere in the middle. But politics and philosophy can intersect and create strange hybrids, mutate, if you like, depending on circumstance. And one person's communist regime is going to be very different to another communist utopia, depending on who set it up, what the rules are, who dictates what is fair, who dictates how much each individual needs to contribute, needs to work, needs to take away, and the corruptions within such a scheme, because every scheme has its own corruptions, as, again, history has shown us. So I like examining that kind of thing through a fantasy lens. I like examining it through a real-world lens, but the world below is a lovely little microcosm where you can travel down a tunnel through a portal and find yourself basically facing a community or a settlement that shouldn't have any political sympathy with you, let's say. But it may also be the only place where you can get a safe roof over your head. So it's, yeah. I always find those encounters in games interesting ones to set up that shouldn't always be antagonistic.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of those blend things as well to some degree, because as you know, I do a lot of werewolf, and the Garu Nation in the Legacy Edition has many fascistic elements, but it also has a lot of anarchistic and communist elements in it too, regarding like family holding together in a sept, even if there's a kind of hierarchy with the rank systems, but the children of Gaia break that in their septs, things like that. And so the how people and societies can kind of pull from many roads to create something that might have good elements and truly dark and evil elements in it.
Yeah. No one pack should be the same as another. And to be honest, there have been times when running Werewolf the Apocalypse, I have grown too uncomfortable to enjoy it, and when I've played it too. and it tends to be surrounding Arun and Philodox or Philodox, depending on your preference, auspices.
Okay.
Because those are the ones that most commonly lean into fascistic thinking. The idea of strength, the idea of dominance, the idea of, again, exploitation potentially, but most of the time it's strongman principle. And the idea as well that especially in the first couple of editions of Werewolf was more prevalent, not so much in Revised and certainly not in 20th, but the whole breeding cycle side of things, the broodmare aspect of it. We are a dying species, therefore it is incumbent upon us to spread our oats, or sow our oats, and that all has it would be, I think it would be untrue to say it has fascistic origins, because there have been plenty of societies pre-fascism that had that kind of principle to it. But it is a very let's I'll probably use some mealy-mouthed definitions here. I'll say something like it's less advanced. It's a very base level, even pre-feudal way of thinking, which really works in Werewolf in a horrible way, because Werewolf's society is pre-feudal. It has a I don't. Some people don't like the word barbaric anymore, but if you look at the word barbaric, I guess as how Romans looked at people who weren't Roman, which ironically could be seen as an element of fetishism, the fact that they're looking at them and thinking, well, these people are base. They have a civilization, but they're caught in the same loop over and over again. They're building nothing. They are simply surviving. They are simply going through the same cycle over and over again. We need to bring our culture to them, when they may have been less interested in spreading their culture, let's say, to the Romans. Now, that's a very black and white way of viewing it. I'm not in any way suggesting the Romans were good. It isn't a question of good and evil. But there was certainly in the early centuries AD or CE, of looking at anyone who wasn't Roman and thinking, well, they're backwards and they need taming and they need bringing into the fold. And those backwards people are, in a sense, your werewolves. They are out of time, they're out of place, they have not kept up, and that could be very sympathetic. But then you scratch the surface and you realise some of the practices, some of the rites, some of the things that they do, because they feel that is what their gods, their Gaia, tell them to. It's another one that's really interesting to explore from a purely theoretical standpoint, but at the same time it also makes me quite uncomfortable, because I think it's so easy, and maybe that's part of the point of the game, but it's so easy to fall into the trap of playing werewolves as fascists. We're stronger than you, we have the moral right, we have been appointed by Gaia, and therefore we are, for all intents and purposes, crusaders.
I think there's an element of that. I think in later books, they, at least especially in Revised, there is that, as you said, there's definitely a challenge to that, regarding like some of the nuances of the spirit world, and specifically the nuances of interactions, it being more explicit. Because I think in earlier editions, I think I saw Phil Bricato say in a meme group, actually on Facebook, funny enough, he commented going, yeah, so we kind of just wrote everything and expected people to read between the lines of what was, intended to be good and bad, and it was very clear that the audience did not. So as the game editions went along, they became more explicit in their politics.
Yeah, that's an awkward one, because I too have fallen afoul of that. I think you, both as a player and as a writer, for that matter, sometimes you don't pick up on a subtext or a metaphor, because the writer is really good and is trying to trick you into playing in a way that then makes you realise, oh, I'm the bad guy all along. And all the World of Darkness games can be pretty good at that. So maybe not Changeling, and not because Changeling is a game about being, about everyone being lovely, happy fairies. Quite the contrary.
Yeah, it's a game about depression.
It is, and if anything, while there is a political aspect to it with your Seelie and Unseelie and your noble houses, it is quite far removed from the in-your-face politics, I would suggest, of vampire and
Hmm.
werewolf and wraith. Wraith, I mean, is a real unpleasant tyranny game. And when I was discussing this not long ago, but you might remember with V5, I wrote the clans and the preview text that went out before V5's release, previewed a part of the Bruja, or Bruja. And as part of that preview text, it said that Bruja can be embraced from the ranks of any politically extreme faction or anyone who might be identified as revolutionary, whether this be communist, anarchistic, or those who identify as, what did I say, neocons? Not, it wouldn't have been neocons. It would alt-right,
Oh
because that
yeah,
was the thing
that
back
was
then, wasn't it?
yeah, that was the term.
Yeah, and I didn't say that as an advert for people to play Nazi Bruja. Far from it. I don't want people playing Nazis at my table, because frankly, just because I don't find it fun. That doesn't mean you can't examine it, but I don't find it fun. Simple as that. And I don't think a great many players bring maturity to those kinds of characters when they choose to play them. But the reason I put it there was because I wanted it to be clear that the Bruja aren't just the lefty good guys, because that's how the left likes to see itself. That's how a lot of people see the left, as the soft response to action from the right. And from my view, there are plenty of populists, right-wingers, who, as far as their supporters are concerned, they're in the vanguard of change. They are reform, they are liberty, they are whatever they want to dress themselves up as. And therefore, they are the kind of people that will attract Bruja just the same as I want to tear down this institution. I want to defund the police. I want to make sure everyone knows that Black Lives Matter. That isn't to say one is more morally right than the other, though clearly I do think that's about the
Sure,
left.
sure.
But as far as a Bruja, an elder Bruja is concerned, someone from 250 years ago, 600 years ago, they're going to look at this person who can lead a crowd, lead a rally, get people following them and think, that person is going to be my child. I want that voice in my stable. And the problem was people read that immediately at face value. People immediately looked at that, and I would go so far as to say, without any evidence, that some people were looking for that kind of thing to cause a stir, because that kind of is how social media propagates these days. And back in the 2010s when that book came out, and so all of a sudden I was being called a Nazi. I was being told, you're encouraging people to play Nazis. You are advertising your game to Nazis just by writing this. And I was saying, no, no, no. I am writing this to explain the Bruja can embrace from these ranks, but that isn't my advocacy that you play one of them. And on reflection, much like Satyr, Phil Bricato, I would have put a sidebar in or an extra sentence that says to the readers, on no accounts play someone on the far right. But in a way, it pains me to do that, which sounds really inauthentic and pretentious. But it pains me because it is taking away the perceived intelligence of the reader. If I have to tell you, what I just wrote up there, that's not for you. If what I just wrote up there, you're just supposed to ignore it. That's antagonists only. And that's me then thinking, are these people, are these readers incapable of picking up that this is clearly a left-leaning role-playing game? But I shouldn't have those expectations, because I've encountered more than enough role players of Vampire and other games who do take it at face value, who do think, this guy says we can play Nazi radicals, this guy says we can play Inquisitors in Warhammer, this guy says we can play this, that, and the other, therefore we will be Nazis in our games. It's sad. It's kind of pathetic. But you kind of have to, and then you end up pissing other people off who say, "Why are you having to hold my hand? I'm intelligent enough to know that I shouldn't be playing this." So there's no way of winning, Keegan. No way. No.
You can't make
We
everyone
should all
happy.
pack our bags.
No, and actually, that to get off the World of Darkness real quick, because you have other games that you are very proud of. They Came From series pulls a lot from the 1950s media, especially They Came From Beneath the Sea, and different eras where we can admit that many of the tropes during that time would be considered problematic. For intentionality, what did you do to try and capture the feel of that while keeping, the problematic politics that you personally don't agree with out of it? And, because that too is a political discussion about, what tropes are allowed in for the feel and what tropes are just absolutely cut out, because even if it adds to the milieu and the general feel of the game, we can't have that.
Yeah, I think so. I certainly don't try to make any game a political diatribe or pamphlet advertising my views. I like to present a lot of views. And just like with those Bruges, I don't like to say, don't play this. I want people to come to their conclusions naturally. With They Came From Beneath the Sea, I think the vast majority of players are going to play characters who are Eisenhower voters. Later on, if they survive through to the 60s, they'll probably vote Nixon when he's up against Kennedy. They are white picket fence, 1950s, greatest generation, post-war Americans. They feel like they want to protect their idyllic little piece of land, and these invaders coming in from the sea right now are threatening it. And so I can absolutely look at that and say, that's probably not how I like the world to be. But I basically put an exclamation mark on the point by having Joseph McCarthy eaten by a giant clam during the fiction of the game. So that I don't think just because you're saying that in this setting the vast majority of blue-collar workers are, sterling working Joes who are just back from the front line in Europe and are putting their wrench to the enemy. But I think that the way you get around it, the way you try and level the playing field a little and allow for alternative views, is you do things like, to be most pointed, you have things like Russians, Soviets, in the 1950s end up having to team up with your true blue Americans to fight off the green menace, the aliens that are invading, so that you can then reach across the aisle and say, you know what, you Ruskies aren't so bad after all. I'll take you home and introduce you to my sister. Come to the diner, I'll buy you a $1 shake. That sort of thing. It's clearly parody. It's not a reflection on reality, where you'd be drummed out of the Navy for shaking hands with a Soviet, I'm sure, in the 1950s. But the principle there is that the Red Scare that existed in the 1950s has been transferred almost wholly to the alien invasion, which means as a political game, you can reach across the aisle. You can work with people who you wouldn't normally align with. You can have a nice spectrum of beliefs and religions at that, so not just political beliefs, and work together to drive off the alien menace. Now, that is still metaphor. As I say, it is your metaphor for the Red Scare, because that is basically what all those 1950s movies were about, or a great many of them. But because Beneath the Sea is such a fun game, it's comedy, it is not supposed to be taken seriously, and while I've encountered some players who really got deep and meaningful with their characters, most of them just want to punch an alien and protect their family. You don't get too deep into the weeds of wondering, you know what, I wonder if these aliens are more like us than the Democrats. Although that's a fun line you could put in the game. It's a way of making the game farcical and making politics farcical. And we do the same thing in Beyond the Sea in a way, not Beyond the Sea, Beyond the Grave, with things like sex politics, with that and Camp Murder Lake, because that's what horror movies, exploitation horror movies, and slasher movies do as well. It's all tits and bums and jokes about erections, and then all of a sudden you're murdered.
True, and I was just curious because I know playing with those kinds of genres, I have other books that try and sidestep some of the more uncomfortable pieces of history and certain genres, and just just as a reader and just consuming RPGs as a form of art, just wondering what might have been unintentionally said and how that contrasts with what was intentionally said. If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. And I think players are, of course, free to explore it as much as they want with the They Came From game. It isn't a focus, but I'm sure every guest on your show on this subject has said the same thing, but politics is everywhere. When people say, I don't want politics in my gaming, that makes very little sense. But what I imagine they're trying to say is, I hear about this every day. They do generally say this. I have to watch the news every single day. I don't want to have to hear about how Trump is wrecking the economy, wrecking international relations, wrecking our soft power, withdrawing aid from everywhere in the world, and generally sending America back about 70, 80, maybe 90 years. They don't want to hear about that in their game. And I understand that. But I think that most RPGs aren't quite so brazen or ham-fisted as to hit you in the face with a villain called Trump, who is doing all of those things with tariffs and USAID and every other damn thing that Trump is doing. You will still have your villains, you're still going to have your prince, you're still going to have your settlement in the world below that is trying to extort, exploit, and take an incredibly valuable prize giant bug with all kinds of gadgets from another settlement as payment, and say it would be stupid for me not to. And you can do that, and the player who's saying I don't want politics in my game will probably be all right with it, because all they don't want to hear is what's on TV right now. Everyone will play with politics. Every game is about politics. It's just whether you are... You don't even have to be subtle. You just have to file the serial numbers off if you want to tell a story. It's just they don't want their game to be Fox News the RPG, and quite frankly, I don't blame them for that, because who the hell would?
So, fun little story. As I'm running my werewolf game, I think back in my recording on January, February, something like that, maybe March, right before the big stock market crash. I had that happen in my game. And then, like, all these other things started happening, and there's been some mirrors happening soon after, and so I let my players do the intro to the session to kind of just get them reacquainted into the game, and the one who was running the intro at that time went, all right, let's jump into Werewolf the Apocalypse. There's an economic crash. The police have suspended habeas corpus as the state grabs power to put people into labor camps because what do I like? Escapism. Anyway.
Yep.
Yeah. I was like, sorry, man. Like, I picked some real absurd shit thinking it wouldn't happen in the real world. I'm sorry. Like,
the age-old example is someone will say something like, well, I play OSR. It is usually OSR, and I'm not suggesting every single OSR fan is some right-wing nutcase, but it's often from the quarters of OSR and D&D players, for that matter. What you might call trad gamers, I suppose, who will say, well, I don't want politics in my game. And so you can then retort and say, okay, well, let's have an example where goblins raid the local village, they take all the people as slaves back to their camp, and the player shrugs and says, well, that's not political. I kill the goblins and free the slaves. Now, clearly, it is political, because slavery is political. Yeah, hell, you could even say armies and invasions and slaughtering an entire population is political. Well, let's roll with the idea that it isn't. Let's roll with the idea that freeing slaves is a simple act, it's a virtuous act, it is not inherently political. What do your characters feel about that? What does your character in particular feel about that? Is your character going to feel any responsibility toward these slaves now that they're freed? Are they going to take them home? Are they going to help rebuild their houses? Are they going to set up trade links with other villages? Are they going to install a priest in the town to heal anyone? And so on and so forth. All of a sudden, if their character is getting involved at all, they are either representing the state, or they're representing a religion, or they're representing a philosophy, or something. They are representing an alignment, for God's sake. So that, as soon as they become personally involved, as soon as it isn't just some abstract roll of the dice, it becomes political. So you'll get some players who say, well, I'm not going to. I freed the slaves, it's up to them to get back home. Which is also political.
Yes.
Because at that point, you are divesting yourself of responsibility and saying every person is beholden to themselves and nobody else. And if you really want to get D&D alignment-ish, you could say that's a chaotic neutral act, or even a chaotic good act. If these people are hale and hearty, you could make their way back home without your aid. But it is still political. So, yeah, the idea that politics can... The only way you can remove politics from games entirely is if you have no personal investment whatsoever in your character actions and you're just rolling dice to see outcomes. And even then, I'd say it's tenuous, because presumably the GM has set up these situations for you and is therefore putting a political position in front of you to challenge you. But there we are. Some people just can't see it that way.
Well, yeah, and you could even go a step deeper, right, in that, why is it goblins? Because goblins aren't usually in main settlements, so why is the other doing the slavery or the enslaving?
Who has driven the goblins out from their natural home, and now they are having to get... you can really expand that. I think we can create a campaign setting out of this, Keith.
Yeah, absolutely could. And then to the OSR thing, I will say OSR, and I've said this to Eddie, is that OSR and World of Darkness has a lot of overlap in how their fans react. They are like split pretty, like, I would say pretty evenly, like 40-60, not a true 50-50, but in like who is kind of very right-wing and who's like loopy lefty, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like myself.
Yeah, don't worry, I find both... this isn't a both sides are as bad as each other. Sure. I don't think that's true. But I can find both sides equally infuriating at times.
Sure.
Depending on what they're saying to me at any given point. I think the whole thing, breaking news, I guess, with Goodman Games recently, and who, by all accounts, are a good company with good people, and they're getting back into bed with Judges Guild, which is not a good company run by genuine Holocaust-denying Nazis, to create more... what is it? The original City source book that came out in the 70s?
Yes, City of Thessia? No, City is...
Yeah.
But yes, yes.
You can make as many excuses as you like we're doing this to refund the people who didn't get their books when it was crowdfunded in 2014, I think it was, and anything else is going back to charity, or we're not going to pay Judges Guild anything until we have broken even, etc., etc. But the fact is, you are still pushing something that is owned by genuine bona fide Nazis.
Yep.
It is a weaselly, pathetic thing to do, especially if your only motivation is, well, we really loved that book.
Yep.
We want to see it get released again. You can't come up with your own. You can't come up with your own and again shave those serial numbers off and say, this is an even better version.
Spiritual successor.
You can even put on the back of your book, inspired by books like...
Yes.
And put the name of it, and you're not going to get sued for referencing the game. That's something in the gaming industry I've always been very confused by, and I know there was when it came to the open gaming license. I know I'm all over the place here. Clearly, I've been snorting a little too much this morning. I haven't, listeners. But I was always confused by how every D20 RPG, back when the OGL was new, would say, inspired by the world's most popular role-playing game, or using the same system as the world's most popular role-playing game. And no one would ever just say Dungeons and Dragons. And I've never been able to work out why. Because I'm unaware, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm unaware of any law that prevents you from saying, if you like our game, check out Dungeons and Dragons. Or in the intro, we love Dungeons and Dragons and it inspired us to make this game. Or any game you happen to be referencing. But for the longest time, RPG publishers have been in the habit of never naming the competition. I guess it's the principle of Coke never mentions Pepsi and vice versa, perhaps. But it feels odd to me. And yeah, in the case of that OSR game, the Goodman Games are working on, I say shame on them. And they are a talented group. And unless there is some legal reason for their doing this, a contractual reason for their doing this, it really would not hurt them to make a book inspired by, and they would still pull in 75%, 80% of the same customers.
Agreed, and because that one will be a gap in my shelf, because I do have the modernization adventures on my shelf. I've got Into the Borderlands, which has the original BX and the 5e conversion. Same with the Isle of Dread. All that way. Temple of Elemental Evil, the Dark Tower. All those. And yeah, just choosing that game, that book, like, I don't know if they just chose to think that there was enough time for people to forget, because they did make a show of breaking...
Yeah,
breaking
5
ties.
years ago, I think it was. They said, we will never work with them again. Yeah. And now they're coming back with this mealy-mouthed, we believe in building bridges, especially in this political climate. What, to Nazis?
Yeah, exactly.
No, those are the people you don't want to build a bridge to.
100%.
I've seen the movie. You literally, it's all about blowing up the bridge that the Nazis are trying to cross. You're not trying to help them cross the river.
Yeah, that was disappointing, and no, I just... because I do like Goodman Games, and everything they've done to change their books, to be more inclusive and things like that. It's very much the corporate having your cake and eating it too. And they're not a huge company, I get it, but like also like, and you can't eat principles. But I think certain principles like not funding Nazis, you can go a little hungry for.
It's a very easy thing to not do. Exactly. It's an easy thing to choose to not do. But, I guess we'll see how it rolls out. They might see the negative backlash. But I suspect the vast majority of people who are fans of the company are going to be unaware of all of this. It's internet discourse.
Yes.
The fact that we know about it, the fact that various other people in the industry know about it, and we might gripe and moan about it is one thing. But most of the customers are going to be completely unaware. They'll see a book come out. They don't know who Judge's Guild is. They'll buy it.
Sure.
And in a way, that's the most harmful element of it. Goodman Games are going to know that they can weather this. Most of the people complaining weren't their customers anyway. It's something I've grown very jaded when it comes to the importance of internet squabbling and trying to take people down in debates. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I haven't joined Blue Sky. I don't intend to, because most of the time I don't think people pursue these debates out of a genuine place of trying to, let's say, educate. It's either an attention thing, or you're just trying to tear someone down. And sometimes someone needs to be torn down, I get that. Maybe having been on the receiving end of it a few times, I'm just a little burned out on all that. So I just don't see... Yeah, I don't really see the point. And I'm not a centrist by any means. but I certainly don't see the need to go on social media and get into knockdown, drag out fights anymore.
No,
I'm too old.
it is a I will engage with people in good faith when good faith is to be had. If
Yeah.
not, you usually block from my fucking comments. Like I don't need you around. Like I do this for fun. I don't I don't
hmm
need you, right?
It's why I've gone back to my YouTube channel in large part. Ever since I came off of Twitter, I I still needed to promote my games, and Twitter was becoming dog shit for promotion.
Sure.
Anyway, because of the way the algorithm works and the fact that I was unprepared to pay $10 to Elon Musk every month, which I think is is still something most
Yeah,
people should refuse to do.
yeah, giving money to
Uh,
Nazis, so we've come full circle. Like,
yeah, exactly. And I'm sure making videos for YouTube is not helping the world either. But it's my space. It's my curated space. Not MySpace. That's a different website. Yeah, it's curated. I can delete comments. I can block people. I can basically make it a place where I get to speak about what I want to talk about. I can communicate with my fans on there or anyone who's interested in the games I like. And if someone comes over to my channel with bad intentions, it is so easy to delete a comment. I posted a video about, what was it? It was either the one about alignment and what I thought of it. No, it may have been about the legacy of Gary Gygax, I think. And someone posted, so one person posted a comment that was, I don't know if it was made by ChatGPT, but it was a good 20 paragraphs long. It was so long and talking about every way in which I was wrong. And I read it and then I deleted it because I loved the idea that this person spent ages typing this out just so I could delete it.
Right.
And then someone made a response video to my Gary Gygax video that lasted longer than my video. They were doing a commentary of my video, and so they kept pausing it and talking about it. I'm
one
told.
of those.
Yeah, I didn't watch it. There's a photo of their thumbnail is me versus George Washington or something like that, who is now representative of Gary Gygax, and it was some cretin. I genuinely don't know who. And I know that they had a longer video, and in their video they pointed people toward my video. So all of a sudden, my ad revenue went. I think they may have even had more views than me, but my view count still went up. So they made me money by ranting and raving about how I was besmirching the good name of Gygax. So if they want to do that in their corner of YouTube, they're welcome to. I'm not going to watch it, but if they want to pay me with their absolute nonsense, then yeah, I'll take any motherfucker's money if he's giving it away.
Yeah, fair enough. No, no, I get it. I get those comments. I've got comments on this series going, the way to do politics in games, you do this, this, this. There's no real world politics. I'm like, everything you said was real world politics. All right, champ. Anyway, delete and block.
Yeah.
I just or I hide them from my channel so they can keep commenting, so that boosts the engagement, but no one can see their shit. So only they see it.
I had someone contact me through MatthewDawkins.com, and they said, I really love The World Below, and I thought, this is starting off well. And yeah, I really love The World Below, and I love how there are no real-world politics in it. And sometimes you wonder how blinkered someone must be. They even went to the extent of saying, I love that the well of sort of chaotic power is so mysterious and nebulous, and there isn't a real world analogy for this. It would be as if God, I think they said something about it would be as if God were crucified in the desert and people were traveling to him to take ambrosia from his veins and spread it. And it was very poetic. And I responded to say, well, actually, no, that is very political. It's political by design, the idea of, okay, you get access to the well of power. Now that you have that power, what do you do with it? The very question, what do you do with power once you have it, is political. And that is the central quandary of The World Below. It's, do you spread power evenly? Do you keep it to yourself? Do you give it only to the people you believe deserve it? And so on and so forth. That is the fundament of the political struggle in the world below. So I appreciate the kind words, but also, yeah, subtext. Going back to our initial point, some people miss it.
And like, sometimes we have blinders. I get it. Like I try not like I miss shit all the time, but also like there are some games like I think Eddie Webb talked about it, how someone told him I liked Werewolf until you put all the eco-terrorism and
Yeah.
ecology stuff. It's like who, and it's just like buddy.
Yeah, people saying V5 or Vampire got ruined when V5 got so political. Since first edition, there's been a fucking sect called the Anarchs.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the fact that
Yeah.
So I will say this to those people who obviously have very limited perception. I know it sounds like I'm calling them all idiots. I'm sure they're not idiots. I'm sure they're not. I don't know what they are, but I'm sure they're not idiots. The thing that I've encountered a great deal in Vampire, and I'm sure you are the same, is most players do gravitate toward Camarilla or Camarilla, the idea of feudal hierarchy, especially in LARPs. They like the idea of a slippery ladder. They like the idea of decapitating the leadership and taking over. And the Anarchs, partly through their portrayal, mainly in Revised Edition, are losers. They are disorganized losers. And so the Camarilla very much became the default playable option. Helped, of course, by the time Revised came out, the Anarchs were a subsect of the Camarilla. Now, I think that kind of poisoned the brains of some of the fans of Vampire the Masquerade a little, because they then believed this is the default way of playing. Therefore, this is not a reflection on a real-world political society. This is a historic political society. This is feudalism. It's neo-feudalism. And that isn't really reflected in the Western world today, they thought. And the Anarchs are morons, so we don't need to do anything about it. And so now they're looking at a game like V5, where all of a sudden the Anarchs are front and center, and you're supposed to be taking down the system, and you're supposed to be sabotaging the prince and his primogen and the rest. And they're thinking, whoa, my beautifully calcified structure is being attacked. This isn't the vampire I knew. So I get it. I understand it. But it's also, I think, wrong. Not people's preference. People can enjoy playing Camarilla games. I enjoy playing Camarilla games. But getting back to that point of Vampire wasn't political until today. Yeah, it was. You were just playing the bad guys. And that's not to say the Anarchs are good, but they're also not stratified in a highly corrupt system that is basically dependent on milking your neonates until they drop so that your elders can maintain their hold on power. So, yeah.
I think I've been thinking about it a little bit, especially with the talk with James, and then seeing some guy, I won't mention his channel, it's bigger than mine anyway, who has some real weird right-wing takes, especially about Vampire. But he akins the Camarilla games that should be more like a mob game, and I fundamentally disagree. The actually better example would be you are a user at Facebook, and the prince is the CEO extracting everything from you, everything he knows, everything to create this feudal empire. Yeah,
that's a very good way of putting it. The modern Camarilla, I think, would be very, very scary if we go with the V5 line that a great many Methuselahs and Elders have gone and disappeared. The idea of an Ancilla or a neonate taking power. They're not going to hold power in the same way as their elders. They're not going to be sat in a castle or even a skyscraper necessarily. They're probably going to have an estate in the Hamptons, far away from the rest of the hoi polloi in New York City, and they'll be on Nantucket Island. They don't give a shit what you're doing, as long as you're making them money, as long as you're spreading their influence. And basically, you've got the ultra-successful tech bros as the princes. And obviously, they are the head of Ponzi schemes and pyramids, which is exactly what the Camarilla always has been. It's changed the coat of paint. So it no longer looks like knights on horseback and hoary old lords in towers. It's now sharp-suited assholes in Learjets.
Agreed. And so those are just kind of some of my thoughts. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts on politics and games, how you use them? Maybe what, because I know you talk, well, I mean, I know you talked about how you don't want to preach to people, but you also have this kind of, and you don't want to talk down to people of like, hey, don't play a Nazi and things like that, and how that crystallized in how you approach political thought in your books. I know it's always a learning process, but do you have any kind of closing thoughts on both as a GM and as a writer of games, how you try and walk that line?
Easiest way to do it is you don't dictate out of character. You don't say to a player, let's say, oh, your character's a real asshole if he believes that. I mean, you can if you want, but you don't keep reinforcing it. Rather, you let the NPCs in the world, the population of the world, respond to the character's actions. And so if your character has, let's say, what game shall we go for? Let's go for Curseborn, for example. So your accursed is some deeply antisocial libertarian, because I know you love them, Keegan.
Oh man, the pipeline is real. Either you go full anarchist like me, or you become a weird neo-Nazi asshole.
We'll call these the objectivist, Randian, whatever, libertarian accursed. So there's going to be of the heirs family. So they're hungry, they devour hearts. And this character, the player has made them with the best of intentions, and they can still have a fantastic time playing them. But what the story guide needs to keep in mind is the consequences of that character's actions. So if that character, for example, says at one point to their chauffeur, you know what, I'm getting peckish, Arthur, can you come into the kitchen a while, and decides to extract Arthur's heart because at this point my appetite is more important than your life. That's a very objectivist way of thinking, in fact. Then the following day, not only is Arthur no longer with you, and so you're going to have to drive your own fucking car, the rest of your staff may well be planning your downfall. The rest of your staff may have left en masse while you were sleeping. They may have reported you to the police if they're aware of it. Now, you may be able to get away with a couple of crimes. You may be able to get away with a few murders here and there if you hide the bodies well enough, but eventually people will start noticing when your victims go missing. And it's the ones closest to you who will betray you or judge you. Such is the way in real life. You end up being an asshole for long enough, you will start losing friends. You will start losing loved ones. They will start calling it out and saying, you know what, ever since this happened, you've been a real prick. And you, on your high horse, probably won't come down and say, my God, you're right, I'll try. You'll say, how dare you say that to me? I'm the lord of this family, at which point they say, I'll say it, because I'm the child of a toxic CEO of a awful company, so I'm going to fly off and make my own life. And that isn't even using a real-world example, despite the fact I can now think of several. So the point being, you're not punishing the player for playing this toxic character. If someone wants to play a character who is radically political, and again, I say this could be on the far left as well as the far right, someone who wishes to impose their views on others to the detriment of their friends and loved ones, their life, then there needs to be a reflection in the world. There needs to be a consequence in the world. And sometimes that'll be the landlord asking for his rent. Sometimes it'll be a girlfriend never calls you back. And sometimes it'll be your family in Curseborn calling you in saying, what the fuck have you been doing? We keep providing you with staff and you keep devouring their hearts. Do you really think this is how it works? You think that you can just eat whoever you want because you're better somehow? No, we have a very selective palate. You go for these kinds of people, which is just as bad in a way, but these people who we have selected, not just anybody who happens to pass by. And you tell the story like that. You make people live through the consequences of their actions, just as they would in real life.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Matthew. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you very much, Keegan, for, as always, tolerating my rambling at length. of which I think I did a lot more in this one than ever before.
I mean, we switched from World Below to the Russian Revolution, so I don't know uh, how
Don't get me
rambly we are
started
in
on the Russian
grand.
Revolution. You
So,
know me.
but
That's my topic of history.
yes. So where are you found if you like to be found on the internet there, Matthew?
People can find me on MatthewDawkins.com or on my YouTube channel, The Gentleman Gamer, which was named before being a gentleman gamer was a horrible thing. Yeah, that didn't outlast its name. I'm not changing it now. Fuck it, I'll reclaim it.
There you go.
So yes, the Gentleman Gamer. I upload around 4 or 5 videos a week right now of varying types. A lot of them are RPG related, so do check it out. And of course, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Matthew Dawkins, where I run lots and lots of games for people every single month.
Perfect. And I've been Keegan. This is A Bunch of Gamers. You can find us on YouTube, Podbean, Listen Notes. I'm on Facebook and Blue Sky now, God help me, but I've never been on Twitter, and I never will. It's a cesspool. Bye.